Hi, this is Francine Valley from West Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and I play at Squamish Valley Golf Course. This is Golf Smarter number 973.
There was a story of Sam Snead, and it's a week before he's playing in his first PGA Tour event, and it's in 1936. He's at the Greenbrier, and the head pro organized a big match. It's going to be this rookie Sam Snead, that's the big up-and-coming name. He's going to play against a former U.S. Open champ, and he's going to play against two other U.S. amateur champions. As a result, word gets out, massive crowd around the first tee, and Sam Snead is last to hit. He is shaking so bad and is so nervous that he's basically on the verge of a panic attack. He was shaking so bad that he couldn't steady the ball on the tee with one hand. He had to use his other hand. That's setting the stage for how nervous he was. So he backs up. He's doing his visualization, and what most people are not aware of until after the fact, but what Sam actually does is he closes his eyes and he relives his most amazing drives on that same hole. He collects himself, moves forward, and then he hits a shot. And the crowd, they're like, whoa. The reason why everybody was like gasping is because he just outdrove his playing partners by 15 yards. And not only that, he has hit it about 10 yards further than all of his most successful drives on that same hole. How does a guy go from the verge of a panic attack to then hitting his best drive ever just moments later?
Caveman Golf, C-Ball, C-Target, Hit Ball, Road to the Tour Summit with BoWatson.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Green.
Welcome back to the Golf Smarter podcast, Bo.
Fred, it's a pleasure to be back. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah. It's been a while since we've had a chance to catch up, and you've been doing some really remarkable stuff as far as the golf training side of it and creating these summits. And we'll talk about your upcoming summit later. But let's talk about what's going on in the media space. We briefly touched on it before we started recording, and I didn't want to go too deep into it because I really want to hear your thoughts on it. But there seems to be this movement from the tour side to look towards things like YouTube and media influencers who are being invited to play and compete now. What is going on?
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating, isn't it? I mean, we're watching. I think it just speaks volumes to the platform that YouTube has been able to provide the golf space. I mean, you can look for it for some really good information, but I mean, if I'm going to be honest, there's a lot of bad information out there. But on the flip side of that,
that's the thing that we talk about all the time. Is like, just be careful about YouTube because there's so much conflicting information that you can your mind will explode.
100%. And, I would say for the greater part of, like, say, the last 14, 15 years, I mean, it's been primarily used in the golf space as a place to go and get instruction, information, right? But over the last, I would say 3 to 5 years, you've had some influencers come out and kind of overtake Rick Shields, so to speak, as far as the most subscribers on YouTube. And when you look at the Good, you look at Grant Horvats, and you look at those types, even Bryan Brothers and those guys. And it's fascinating because now it's kind of shifted into a direction where it's all about entertainment. And you got all these guys and YouTube stars that are playing against each other in these matches, and they're bringing a lot of eyeballs to it. And so as a result of that, PGA Tour has taken notice. And earlier this year, interestingly enough, they actually, I believe it was several spots they offered as exemptions or sponsor invites into the Myrtle Beach. That was the first year that Myrtle Beach has had a PGA Tour event. And so several of these guys actually were able to go play in a PGA Tour event. So it's pretty interesting. Then you get to, say, the Creators Cup. It's the first time they ever did this. But the week of the Tour Championship, they had what was called the very first, I believe, Creators Cup. I think it was played on Monday or Tuesday. And what was so interesting about it is that, you had, Luke Kwan, you had, I believe it was Wesley Bryan. I don't know if George played in it. But you had a few of the good guys. You had Paige Spearneck, I think is how you say her last name, Amy Cho, and there were a few others like that. And so it was all these like big top influencers that were invited to play into this event. And Luke Wine ends up winning it in a playoff. And if I'm not mistaken, because he won that, he got an exemption or an invite into next year's Masters and the Open Championship.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Tell me about it.
That's really remarkable. And so I guess it looks like PGA is recognizing what's going on, and it's interesting because a lot of the names that you mentioned, I'm not familiar with, and I'm obsessed with YouTube. I really enjoy, no matter what I think of Liv, but I really enjoy watching Bryson and his Break 50. I think it's just such a great idea. And I've asked a friend of mine, I said, look, instead of competing against each other, why don't you and I just go out together, combine our efforts, and see if we can shoot par? And he's like, yeah, I'd be willing to try that. So
just make sure you film it.
No. That's the thing is, I've always, it's like, oh, I'll just bring a camera out and we'll just video. It's like, no. These guys are going out there with a crew. Mm-hmm. They've got multiple microphones. They got at least 2, probably 3 cameras going at any given time, dragging around these guys. And it's like, that's a lot of pressure. Forget about gambling. Just doing it in front of a camera is a lot more pressure.
Yeah. I mean, but hey, what better way to simulate pressure and, work on your tournament golf, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what you're doing, right? You're talking about tournament golf and playing to win as opposed to just playing. You've been focusing on how golfers can just like, no, I'm a very competitive person. I want to win. Mm-hmm. How do I do that? Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a key subject, right? Because everybody talks about, I remember Dr. Rick Jensen talking about this one time, and I'll never forget it. He talks like there's like 4 phases of, playing golf, so to speak, and training. The first phase is kind of like your, I believe it's like block practice, like where you're working on your swing and stuff like that. And then there's like a second phase that, you're starting to kind of transition and do like game-like scenarios. And I could be missing the boat on this, but, the principle is still the same. And then the third phase is like you're going out on the course, which is what he called like transfer training. Like, how are we able to take the skills that we're learning in a practice environment and able to take it to the course? And then the last phase is, all right, how do we do it in a tournament setting? How are we doing under pressure? And that's a totally different animal. And honestly, that's what, Shannon, my business partner, and I, we specialize in, which is more the mental side. And that's where we show golfers, we call it psychomotor training. It's teaching people how to get into the zone at a flip of a switch. The more appropriate scientific term obviously is flow state. And we like to coin or talk about, we coined the term, caveman golf. When you play your best golf, it's when you see target, see ball, hit ball. And it was funny. Scott Falls and I were having a conversation just last week, and he was sharing, a little bit of how he's been playing, and he invited Garrett Clark, and it's on the YouTube channel. And I was just talking to him about that. But these last few weeks, like Scott has been playing like lights out, and it's been funny because what he shared on the phone was like, this is the first time in I don't know how many years where I do not have a single swing key or swing fault. And I was like, well, Scott, you know what that is, right? And he's like, I don't know. It was like, I said, that's caveman golf. It's just see target, see ball, hit ball. And we know that when a golfer can get to that place, it's a special place to be in, because honestly, that's where your best golf is going to be. And that's in any sport. I mean, you go ask, like the late Kobe Bryant or anybody, or even LeBron, when they're playing their best, they're not sitting there talking about how their elbow flexion is and where the pressure is on the basketball. No, it's like, I see the arc of the shot and I see it going in. And it's more right brain oriented, where a lot of golfers, they get in trouble so fast when they stay in the left side of the brain. And honestly, the only sport I think that people can actually dominate from the left side of the brain is playing chess. But you don't want to take that to any sport, and especially not golf, because when you start getting into the overthinking and too many swing thoughts, good luck.
Yeah. I totally understand it. I've had it a couple of times. There's times where I'm like, I'm so comfortable out there. I'm not thinking about it. I'm just, see target, aim, hit it, and don't think about what I'm going to do with it. But I don't know what's going on. But the last couple of weeks, it's like, what am I doing out here? I really feel lost. I mean, the last round I played, it was like, this is not going well. There's periods of time where I can play 3-4 rounds with a ball. And then there's last week where I lost 5 balls in 1 round. I'm like, who are you playing? Who is this? What's going on? I'm overthinking it, huh?
Very likely. Very likely. or you need a reset, and
yeah. Well, how do you do that?
Oh, that's a good question, because a lot of people, they try to do the textbook version, right? They read all the, I'm not going to call out the books, but they know what is said in a lot of mental game books, but there really isn't anything out there that's very practical. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people, and you can go on our Amazon, and honestly, like, we're not taking credit, God gave us the download for the book that we wrote, so I'm giving him the glory on that. But, it's fascinating. One of the biggest things that we hear all the time from Amazon reviews and people that read our book is that it's so practical. And so, like, one of the things that we share about resetting is what's called the ball reset. And we go in detail in our chapter, but I'll briefly cover it here. Because, like, when someone's in what we call a red light state, when things are going south, like we said, you lost several balls or something like that, you have to do something in order for you to get back to what we call a green light state. Neuroscience, Dr. Izzy Justice kind of pioneered this part of it, analyzing and doing brain scans of, thousands of golfers. And he's done a lot of amazing work in this area. And he has shown that, when we have so many swing thoughts or so many thoughts or just negative thoughts, for an example, let's say like you hit 2 shots OB, you're in a red light state at this point. And especially if you've done it off the tee 2 times in a row, how many times have we heard people where they snap hook one left OB and then they're like, all right, I'm not doing that again. I'm going to try to overcorrect, and they overcorrect and then they slice it into the water on the right-hand side. And at that point, you're in fight or flight mode at this point. And the main thing is, if you don't do something here, it's going to come off the tracks very, very fast. And this is where the ball reset enters the picture. And so part of the ball reset is we do what's called a hard reset. Now, a piece of this we got from Dr. Izzy Justice, but the other part of this is from Brian Kane, which is one of our mentors. And what we did is we were able to piece this all together. And what's so fascinating about it is when you do the hard squeeze, this is where, like, you take a club or you take your hands, you can take a towel, it doesn't matter. But there's a type of breath that we like to utilize, which is called a physiological sigh, which, by the way, if you just do that breath alone, Stanford came out last year and they came out and shared this research. And I believe it was January last year. You can go look this up. And the original study of it was how to lower anxiety. And so they found that this type of breath, like, you could think of all the breathing techniques that people have talked about over the last 10, 20 years. Well, the physiological sigh is on a totally different level. And it just completely outdid every single one of them. The military or box breathing, all those, right? And physiological sigh was just in a totally different category. So, like, Scotty Scheffler, for when he's playing the best, he's like in a totally league of his own, like Tiger was in his prime. That's the physiological sigh when it comes to breathing. Okay. So when you do a physiological sigh, it's like where you're doing 2 quick inhales, like where you're breathing through the nose and you're taking like a deep belly breath first, inhale. And then it's a very second quick inhale, pausing, and then you're doing a long exhale out your mouth for like 5 or 6 seconds. Now, when you do the hard reset, you're basically doing the same thing where you're going, and then you're holding your breath, and then you're squeezing as hard as you can. So, like, on a pressure of like 1 to 10, you're squeezing at 11 for 5 seconds. and then you're exhaling slowly while decreasing the pressure. Let's say on a golf club in my grip, and I'm decreasing the pressure from like a 10 down to like a 2 while slowly exhaling. Now, Dr. Izzy Justice, a part of that, he found that when you did just the deep belly breath, squeeze as hard as you can, exhale slowly, they found that in an actual real-time brain scan on a golfer, they found that he went from a red light state and it went back down to a green light state. And what was interesting is in the brain, it had the equivalent effect of if you had done 20 minutes of meditation or 20 minutes of yoga. Wow. Talk about a massive neurohack, right?
Yeah.
So just that piece, right, is part of the B, which is breathe. We call it breathe hard reset. So that's B as in the ball acronym. The next part is A. That's where you do an affirm, or you do a power talk statement. Say you hit, your drive OB. Well, you just say, hey, you know what? Adversity is my advantage. So you say that really quick under your breath. The first L is look back. All that simply means is we're going to look back to a time where we hit an amazing drive on a similar hole, or maybe it's the same hole, and you're going to relive that memory. And so you relive that memory, basically like daydreaming. So you play that shot over in your head. And then once you've done that, then you go to the last L, which is look forward. So just in about under 20 seconds, we just go through the entire ball acronym, which is a hard reset, power talk statement, relive an amazing memory. Now your attention's back to the present moment. And here's the cool part. Let me give a little bit of a story here on that first L.
And before you do that, we're going to take a time out and I'll hear the story after this. Okay, I cut you off and I apologize for that, but I don't. So, because I needed to absorb what's going on here, because I'm going through the breathing part and I feel like that I'm creating tension by tightening up with this, squeezing it, but then letting it go. I think back to Dr. Joe Parent telling us about the Etch-a-Sketch, that you use when you're having a tough time. Just take your Etch-a-Sketch, flip it over, shake it out, and erase the whole thing and then start again. But we're at the BALL acronym. Yep. Breathe, affirm, look back, look forward.
Yep. There you go.
And you had a story to tell.
Yeah. So what's fascinating is we came across this. I forgot where I found it, but there was a story of Sam Snead, and it's a week before he's playing in his first PGA Tour event. Like he's going to make his PGA Tour debut, right? And it's in 1936, I believe, is the year. And he's at the Greenbrier, and the head pro or whoever it was, they organized like a big match. And so in this match, it's going to be this rookie Sam Snead. That's the big up and coming name. He's going to play against a former U.S. Open champ, and he's going to play against two other U.S. amateur champions. Well, as a result, word gets out, massive crowd around the first tee. And now Sam Snead is last to hit. He is shaking so bad and is so nervous that he's basically on the verge of a panic attack. And to put this in perspective, they said that he was shaking so bad that he couldn't steady the ball on the tee with one hand. He had to use his other hand. All right. So that's setting the stage for how nervous he was. So he backs up, gets behind the ball. He's doing his visualization, and what most people are not aware of until after the fact, but what Sam actually does is he closes his eyes and he relives his most amazing drives on that same hole. Now he collects himself, moves forward, and then he hits a shot. And the crowd is gasped. They're like, whoa. And the reason why everybody was gasping is because he just outdrove his playing partners by about 15 yards. And not only that, he has hit it about 10 yards further than all of his most successful drives on that same hole. Now, wait a second. How does a guy go from the verge of a panic attack to then hitting his best drive ever just moments later? And a big piece of that is the first L in the BALL acronym is what we call the look back. And the reason why it's so powerful and it's so important for people to utilize is because when you have a bad memory, or maybe you have an upcoming shot that's, you're dreading or you're very nervous about, we hear all the time, people have first tee jitters. This is an amazing tool to utilize before you go hit that first tee shot. Because here's the thing, you could be dreading it. You could be thinking about all the negative energy and what if scenarios. But if you go through that entire ball acronym where you do the hard squeeze and you say something like, hey, the more pressure there is, the better I perform. And then you do a look back where you maybe go back in time where there was a lot of pressure in a certain shot, and you hit your best drive ever, and you go back and you relive that memory. Well, I got to ask you, if you've done those 3 steps and you did it with the right intensity and you were obviously walking in faith with those first 3 steps, then that last L, when it comes to looking forward, you would have to be at that point pretty excited to play that upcoming shot. You would have to be. You'd be much better. I mean, let's say you're like 5%. Like, if we're going to put a scale on this, let's say you're like at a 5% of being successful to now you do the ball acronym. I mean, you just increase your chances of hitting a pretty good shot to probably like 80, 90% at this point. So that's how we practically do a hard reset. So when you're in the middle of a round, you're playing terrible, or you got something that you're dreading, ball reset is going to be your secret weapon.
Awesome. Also, there's the acceptance, and we talked to Joel Suggs a couple episodes back, and he talked about his PGA bell curve on scoring, which is you're going to have rounds that go poor, good, average, right? And the bell curve, the top of the bell curve is your average. So accept that. Don't beat yourself up, right? Lighten up, let it go. Move forward, and stop thinking about your swing mechanics, because it's only going to hurt, right?
Yep.
It's really going to kill you, the thinking about swing mechanics.
Yeah. Swing mechanics, if you think too much about that, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I come from a swing background and, blessed to learn under some amazing minds in the game. And it is a piece of the game that you can't ignore. However, if you don't shut that off when you're playing, it's going to be really, really difficult to play your best. You have to eventually, either with just like one swing thought or one swing key, which is healthy. But when you start going and thinking too much about that and start adding in more, it's going to be very, very tough to perform. And that's just the nature of the game. It's a sport that demands precision. But when we start getting in our own way with too many thoughts, too many things that we're thinking about, and splitting our focus, good luck. It's just going to be a really, really difficult round for you. I hate to say that.
And you work with a lot of amazing instructors, but you're partnering with them. It's not necessarily that you're getting instruction from them. You're trying to collaborate with them, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing with your summits that you do. It seems like you've been doing them annually now for a couple of years.
Yeah. This will be our upcoming one. This will be our 4th one.
Yeah.
4 or 5.
Yeah, I think we've covered each of them with you.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. And so let's talk about some of the people that you work with at your upcoming summit.
Yeah. So, I think it's fair to say, like, the very first summit we had was Consistent Golf Summit. And the whole idea behind that was, sadly, we talked about it a little bit, unfortunately, many golfers, they go on YouTube, they're searching for information, and it's not that it's bad. They got something wrong in their swing, or maybe they don't have access to a coach. And unfortunately, I hear that a lot from golfers in our community. They're in a place where maybe they do have some swing instructors, but they're not very good, unfortunately. And, that's another reason why we have the summit is we want to not only educate golfers, but we also want to educate instructors and help them get better. And so the idea behind the very first summit, and the reason why there was such a big need for it is, if you had, God forbid, something seriously wrong health-wise, you have a special disease, or you have something that, is like cancer or a tumor or whatever. My question to you would be, are you going to go see a general practitioner, or are you going to go see the best specialist in the world on that particular topic? I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? You want to go to the very best. And so that was the idea behind the very first summit. And it's the idea behind every summit we've ever hosted, and especially the one that we're about to do, which is the Road to the Tour Summit. If you're going to go out there and search information, yeah, you can go on YouTube and you can go search for free, but then that is probably going to cost you more than the free information you just got. And see, that's the part of the equation most people aren't taking into account, is that you can honestly go out there and search your way out of this game. And sadly, that's what many golfers do. And I know that from research by the Proponent Group. Lauren Anderson runs that group down in Florida. And it's kind of like a, who's who in instruction. And the research that Lauren has, published and, have found over the years, I'll never forget the one study that he found where, yes, we see, over 1 million golfers typically, National Golf Foundation, it's no secret. And we talk about this in the book too, but they said, somewhat like 1 million to 2 million golfers quit the game every year. Now, besides injury, retirement, getting old, being kind of like the number one, but the next closest, the biggest reason why golfers are quitting the game is because of frustration.
It's the word I was going to toss out, frustration.
Yep. And a lot of that, unfortunately, is self-inflicted. And it's because of people going on YouTube, searching for something that they look at the symptom, right? Which is, hey, I got a slice. Okay, I'm going to go search YouTube for how to fix a slice. But here's the downside. In this game, you have so many different body types. You have so many different types of setups. You have different clubs and different shafts. So, I mean, there are so many variables that are in play here that it doesn't just come down to swing plane. There are other factors that we're not taking into account. And honestly, unless you are a really, really good coach or somebody that has actually learned under a really good coach, that's a big key, that you're educated on what to look for and how to search for it. Very likely you're not going to get to the root of the problem. And that's where the specialist comes in. And that's kind of been the idea behind every summit I've ever hosted, is I went and found the expert in this particular, part of the game when it comes to club fitting or nutrition or the mental part of the game or full swing or short game or putting. We went out and found those types, like a James Siegman or a Sean Foley or, goodness gracious, I mean, there's so many, like Dr. Kwan, Ralph Bauer. I mean, there's so many types out there in different areas of the game that it's like, okay, here's the specialist and here's the information and here's the questions that you need to know in order for you to be successful in your game. So that's been the idea behind every summit we've hosted. And the one we got coming up is Road to the Tour.
It's so interesting that you said something that I had just written down about the downside to YouTube is you'll see something that resonates with you, but it's not personalized to you. So you'll think, oh, well, I have this slice and this guy's teaching me how to get rid of a slice. And so I'm going to go out and do that. And yet that's not really what the cause of the problem is, right? Maybe you just have a bad grip. And that's not being discussed in any of the videos that you're looking at, nor would you even consider that, oh, well, this is the way I've always gripped it, so it's got to be fine.
Yeah.
Right? So the downside, again, of YouTube, as prolific as it is it's not about you. You make it about you. Am I right on that? I mean, is that kind of where we're going with this?
Yeah, I mean, it's the idea, right? You can quickly spot out the very good coaches, the one that is, are the ones that are sharing the really good content, and they're the ones that are kind of educating you more on what to look for versus like, here's a drill to fix it. And you got to get to the why. And it's really, really hard when you're going to take that one-to-many approach. And that's why, like, it's so important to educate you based on. So I'm a big fan. I've been blessed to kind of learn the Golf Machine, Morad, and so you'll hear coaches and even some YouTube instructors will talk about P1, P2, P3, P4, P5, and they're great positions. That's all they stand for. P1 being addressed, P2 like shaft parallel in the background. I mean, and backswing. Just to keep it really simple. P3 being like where the left arm's parallel to the ground, and so you're looking at these positions, and it's a really easy way to kind of pinpoint and figure out like where are you getting wrong. John Doherty, who we partnered with, and he's a phenomenal coach that nobody knows about yet. But in my opinion, he's one of the best in the world, and it's mainly because he spent so much time with Matt O'Grady. And anybody that's worked their salt and teaching a game have gotten their information one way or another from Matt O'Grady. Whether they're going to say it up front or not, I can attest to that because I've had conversations with the who's who in the instruction world, and I can tell you they have gotten their information either indirectly or directly from Mac. Okay. In fact, funny side story. I'm not going to name names, but like the who's who, when they did the Golf Digest schools, and I'm talking about the who's who, we're talking like the top 5, top 10 people that are currently right now in Golf Digest. But back when they did the Golf Digest schools in the late 90s, they had Matt come in and teach the teachers before they went out and did the schools. So it's pretty funny. But anyways, so P1, P2, P3, P4, when you have somebody talk about those positions or you educate them on what to look for, John is always a big proponent of, P1 and P2 is probably one of the most important, what do you want to call it, sequencing that you want to look for. Because a lot of times what happens when a person takes a club back or their grip type or how their tilts are working, you can fix a lot of issues between P1 and P2 that affect the entire rest of the swing. So like, for an example, if someone like over rotates and goes way inside from P1 to P2 in the backswing, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble going up to the top of the swing at P4. And then when you start down P5, which is, someone getting very steep and coming over the top or whatever, but it all started from address to the backswing in the very early part, P1 to P2. So, that's what I mean by like, you want to have a foundation or a system, which is what Mac has done when he created the P1 system. I mean, the P system, like P1 to P9, basically. That's what we call it. But what's fascinating is that when you have something like that, you know what to look for, and it's easier to diagnose the faults and then get to the root of it. But when you go straight into, hey, do this drill, do this, without explaining the why, that's where it gets dangerous.
Interesting. So the summit that you've got coming up this year, it's interesting because, again, this is you're addressing golfers that want to be serious about playing winning golf, not just playing golf, not just going out there and I'd say not just going out there and having fun, but when you're playing good golf, it's a lot more fun than when you're playing bad golf. But still, no matter what level you're at, there's going to be days that you're going, I was not good today. I shot a 73, Mm-hmm. And then there's guys who are like, I was not good today. I shot 106. But you want to address those folks that are serious about competing. And you've got this summit coming up this year that's going to be, let's start name dropping here. Who do you have and how? Is this what you do for the year? As you spend your time developing the next summit? Or are you teaching these days?
It kind of seems like that. In this particular one, this has been in the works for probably the last 5 months. So, we've got a lot of time put into this and, bringing in these type of people and experts and influencers and all that into this event. So, yes, the majority of my time is still spent, we're coaching clients all around the world because, like I said, a big part of what we do on a day in, day out basis is the mental side of the game, which is, teaching people how to get into flow state more often because that's where you're going to win. That's where you're going to play your best golf, regardless of what level you're at. Even if you're a guy that shoots in the 90s, 100s, if you can think better and, get to a place where we call caveman golf, you're going to lower your scores. Like, that's just a fact. And that also applies to a player, like a really good player that's on tour. If you can remove the distractions and get to the point where pressure doesn't necessarily bother you as much, or, it's not that you'll ever remove pressure. It's okay to be nervous. It's okay to, feel that kind of energy, but it's how you respond is key. And that's what we've really helped a lot of players do, is how we respond to that type of environment. And although the summit is Road to the Tour Summit, we know there's going to be a lot of people that are attending this that are your everyday golfer that wants to win a club championship, or maybe just wants to be the best player in their foursome. Or it's a college player, or maybe even up and coming junior golfer that wants to play golf in college. And then you're playing in college. I mean, how do you win your first college tour event? I mean, a college event, or after college, what does it look like to turn pro? And if I'm going to turn pro and I'm going to make this my pursuit, what's the fastest path? Well, that's your answer with the summit. Is we have literally, I guess you could say, we pioneered it, because I haven't seen anything else out there in the last 5 years. Last time we hosted us, the very first one was, I think, 2021. And it was the very first ever summit that was designed around what does it take to get to a top 10 world ranking. And so that's what we've done with the Road to the Tour Summits. And that's what this one is all about. We're bringing in the who's who to show you the fastest path to get to the top level in the game. And that's for the PGA Tour and the LPGA Tour.
Amazing. And the people that you bring in, you're not just talking about swing mechanics. You've got them covering all different topics.
Absolutely. We are covering
like a month of Golf Smarter. It's like just going all over the place with a lot of different experts sharing their wisdom and instruction. Is this a hands-on or an online course?
No, so this is a live online summit. There'll be 2 days on the 18th and 19th of November. And, we have brought in PGA Tour, LPGA Tour, and a DP World Tour. So we had Justin Bargett from PGA Tour to share his insight. What does it look like in all the different paths to get to the PGA Tour? We also had Jody Brothers, who is Chief Business Officer of the LPGA Tour and also the head of the Epson Tour, which is the development tour for LPGA Tour. So he gives all of his insight and shares the multiple paths for someone to get to the LPGA Tour. But he also has given and is giving some amazing insight to get the attention of a potential sponsor invite. And that is fascinating, because what he has and what he's going to share is amazing when it comes to getting your name recognized or putting yourself to the front of the stack. These tournament directors, they're getting like 50, 60, 70 applicants on, trying to get a sponsor invite into a tour event. And what Jody is going to share is one of the fastest ways to actually secure a tournament sponsored invite. And that's super important. So that's going to be a good one. And then we had Stuart Cage of DP World Tour, which is known as, formerly as a European tour. And he shared some amazing stuff, and we'll share some incredible stuff on, how to increase your chances of qualifying through, Q school and stuff like that. So we got those guys. And then of course,
and then there's a long list of names, and we'll get to more of those, but we'll come back and we'll do that in a minute. You mentioned that the summit is just coming up in a couple of days of when we're publishing this show. It's November 18th through the 19th. It's a 2-day online summit. So that means if somebody is like fascinated and wants to pursue this, but the date has already passed, is it still available on demand? Can you still get access to all this amazing information?
Absolutely.
Good.
But
there's a but.
But this is going to be good for your listeners, because you know what this means, Fred? That when you publish something and when they come out with an episode, they definitely don't want the what they call it. They call it FOMO, fear of missing out. So
I know it well.
This means that they need to watch your content as soon as possible, as soon as it comes out. Because if you are listening to this right now, good for you. Because if you want to attend the Road to the Tour Summit, I'm going to actually show you there's a way that you can attend this for free and watch the entire event for free. And you'll know when you go to the page and go through Fred's link, which will be /Golf Smarter, and you definitely want to check that out because the information that's going to be shared on this summit, honest to God, we could charge 1,000 plus for this. And in fact, there will be many PGA, and there's going to be a lot of PGA instructors that are going to go through this for the MSR credits. But a lot of them will also attest and say that, yes, I could have charged 1,000 plus for this event, just for the information and who's on it, what they're going to be sharing. And even, let's put it this way, if you're a person that is like a tour player and this information secures your tour card, what is that worth to you? Well, I can tell you right now, that could be worth millions of dollars. So to be able to attend this for free for 2 days, it's pretty fascinating. But if you are by chance...
Stop teasing. How do you do that?
You got to go to the page. You'll find out.
All right. So the link will be in our show notes.
It will be. But even if you're listening to this after November 18th, 19th, it's totally fine. We're still going to show
2024.
Yep. We're going to show you how to still go to the link, and you'll still be able to watch and see the recordings, and we'll show you how to do that.
Great. Okay. Let's keep talking about some of the people that you're going to have there because make it worth it. Let's go down the list of people that you're going to be showcasing in your summit.
Yeah. So like day one, obviously we got the PGA Tour, LPGA Tour, and DP World Tour, but we also have Mark Immelman, and Mark's known as a longtime broadcaster, brother of Trevor Lumen, and Mark's a player himself, but he's also a great coach, and he's been out there inside the ropes for many years, and so he's got to see the who's who in the game, and what he's going to be sharing in that particular recording session with me is going to be fascinating because he's going to show you what it takes to get to that level, but not only that, what you need to do in order to stay out there. See, this is where a lot of players get it wrong. They can make it on tour, they get their tour card, but how many times have we heard people lose their card within the year of actually obtaining it, and then we don't see them again? And so you want to watch Mark's episode because he's going to share some incredible stuff that's going to actually show you how to stay out there on tour. And
let me ask you this about these presentations. Is this like a PowerPoint presentation that they're doing, or are you interviewing these people?
Yeah, the majority of them.
And I'm guessing it's all video.
Yeah, that's going to be video, and that's what's unique about it. Sometimes, unlike most podcasters, they basically just record it, and it's only audio, right? Whereas this is going to be video and audio. And so people will be able to watch this. It's going to be live. It's going to be a live summit on the 18th.
And each person's doing their own presentation. And it's like a PowerPoint thing?
Not necessarily PowerPoint.
Slide?
A lot of them is going to be like an interview style where we're going to be asking them questions and just getting information. But
and you're going to be doing that interview?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And so some of them might use a PowerPoint. They might go into presenting style, but, in the case of Mark, it's probably going to be, since that's his style all the time, is podcasting like yourself. He's probably going to be more comfortable just sharing his information freely, right? So that's the first one, or that's one of the ones on day one. We also got Pete Cowan. Pete Cowan is probably the best coach that nobody knows about. It's funny, there's a Golf Digest article written about him with that title. But Pete is somebody that you should know about because, honestly, in my opinion, he's probably top 3 in the world. Just in terms of his wisdom and who he's worked with. I mean, Rory McIlroy is part of the students he's worked with. Matt Fitzpatrick, I think Lee Westwood, a lot of European stars, right? And just to him and who he's worked with, he's credited for helping players win over 250 times worldwide and then 8 majors. The guy's got a ton of wisdom. And so his is someone I'm super excited about because the wisdom that's going to be shared on that is going to be amazing. He doesn't really do a whole lot of interviews or a lot of like freely sharing his information out there. So to get him on the summit, I'm pretty pumped about. So he'll be another one. We also got Parker McLachlan. He'll also be on day one. That's the short game chef. He's also a PGA Tour winner, and he's gone through Q School twice. And he's one that I'm really excited about because this guy has successfully gone through Q School twice. Not many people can really say that. And so, again, he's going to have a lot of wisdom to share, like how to successfully go through Q school, because everybody knows Q school is like the most intense pressure, right? There's so much on the line. And for him to go through it and successfully qualify twice, it's going to be pretty interesting to get his wisdom. But his segment is also going to be a lot on short game. He's a phenomenal wedge player, and he's one of the best out there to ever do it. And so he's going to share some really incredible insight on how to become a better wedge player, better person around the green, also in putting. And then we also have Scott Fawcett. I know Scott's been on your show, and
Yep.
What better guy to cover strategy, right? What decade
golf. Yeah,
that's amazing. He and I have developed a really good friendship over the years, and he's been on pretty much, I think, every summit I've done. And I mean, why not? Because the guy is just so brilliant when it comes to just making better decisions. And anybody is going to get better if you apply any of his stuff. So his is always going to be good. And then Shannon and I will also be on day one, and we're going to share, a lot on the mental side of the game. And so that will conclude day one as far as the speakers for day one. But, it gets really good on day two. We got some incredible people on day two.
Go ahead. Come on.
Yep. So one of the headliners is going to be Ted Scott. So it's no secret the incredible year that Scotty Scheffler had this past year in 2024. But in my opinion, I really believe Ted is a big reason behind it. And here's why I know that.
Really?
We all got to see what happened at the PGA Championship earlier this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Scotty gets arrested, goes to jail. He's probably only like one or two people that could go through that type of, circumstance, right? Adversity, and still come out and shoot. Man, what did he shoot that day? It was like 4 or 5 under, something like that.
It was
on
amazing.
that Friday or whatever it was. And what's interesting is the next day, and this has been planned, Ted was supposed to, go home to his daughter's graduation or something like that in high school, that he had already planned that he was going to be away. And then we see Scotty on day 3, moving day, and he really struggles with the fill-in caddy. And so my opinion is Ted is a big part of like keeping him grounded. And Ted also believes, like Scotty, he believes in God. And so he's and there's been articles and stuff like that written on their relationship and everything else. But I really believe that Ted is a major part of why he's done so well. And, the fascinating thing is Ted's got a ton of wisdom just in terms of caddying. So I brought Ted in because I want Ted to share on his experience as a caddy and what players need to look for when it comes to hiring their own caddy, because that's important. That's a team. And a lot of times, players come out of college and they don't give a lot of thought. And I remember Mark Fulcher, Justin Rose's caddy I had on the very first summit. I mean, he covered a lot of red flags when it comes to choosing the right caddy and stuff like that. And you don't have that luxury. If you earn your tour card and you choose a bad caddy and you're not gelling and you waste, 5, 6, 8 events and you're not making a cut, that's going to cost you a lot of money. And that's going to put you behind the 8 ball. So that's another person that we brought in for day 2. We also brought in one of our tour players, Savannah Valabi, and she's been amazing at just being able to showcase herself like through Instagram and making herself attractive to sponsors. So her information and her wisdom in just showing players on how to attract sponsorships is a big deal, because when you're a college player and you're coming out, you need to go ahead and get the ball rolling on the social media side of things so that you can make yourself attractive to a potential sponsor. Sure. And she has done an amazing job of that from a grassroots level, so to speak. And so she'll share her wisdom on how to do that. And that's going to be very valuable. And then we also got people like Ralph Bauer of Tour Read. I know a lot of times, I was one of the first ones to be certified in aim point at the very beginning with David Orr, but a lot of times I hear the complaint that when people struggle with reading greens and they've gone through aim point, it's like they can't really feel the percentage of their feet and stuff like that. Well, Tour Read is incredible because it's an app on your phone that you can literally just go out there and place on the green and see what the percentage is. And you just continue to work through that to verify what your reads are. And so it's a really good alternate to someone that maybe struggles with aim point. So I brought in Ralph to share his expertise on that. So that's going to cover the putting, green reading side of things.
Great.
And we got a few more, like John Doherty, who's going to cover Full Swing. And, that's somebody that, in my opinion, is probably the most underrated in the swing space because of his time spent as Mac O'Grady's right-hand man for many years when Mac did a lot of these golf schools. So a lot of wisdom, a lot of information, but it's all geared toward helping people get to that next level in their game.
Yep. And how long per day is each summit day?
So
it sounds like a commitment.
To an extent, right? I believe we're looking at somewhere between 3.5 to 4.5 hours each day.
Wow. Okay. So make that your plan for golf that weekend.
You need to, right? No excuse, right? We're going to be in November, golf for, basically North Carolina and above, right? It's getting colder. So what better way to maybe take some cold days and immerse yourself into an event like this to better your game for the off season?
Absolutely. Road to the Tour Summit. And it's going to be at Road2TheTourSummit.com.
You got it.
And there is a lot more information. There's a link in today's show notes. Just use that, and it'll take you there and get you some. Well, you kept talking about you could do it for free if you go through this. I'm not sure what that means, but you can figure it out for yourself. Bo, it's great to talk to you, man. It's always interesting what you're putting together, and I love having these conversations. Thanks so much for coming back on the show.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Again, I'll leave a link in the show notes so that you can get access to the live event, but also the on-demand replay as well. You go to Road2TheTourGolfSummit.com/golfsmarter, and that 2 in there is the number 2. Road, number 2, TheTourGolfSummit.com/golfsmarter. I absolutely want to thank this week's Golf Smarter ambassador, Francine Valley from West Vancouver, British Columbia, for opening today's episode. But I also want to make sure that Francine thinks seriously about getting out of Canadian winter by joining us for our next Golf Smarter adventure the weekend of March 26th through the 30th, 2025, to the iconic Robert Trent Jones Trail just outside of Birmingham, Alabama. We'll be staying at just one beautiful resort and spa the entire weekend, but we're playing 3 different courses along the trail. The ground transportation is included, and we'll have dinners together, do a group podcast recording, share stories, have a lot of laughs, but most of all, get to check off 3 beautiful courses: Oxmoor Valley Ridge Course, then Ross Bridge, and finish with Oxmoor Valley Valley Course. Reserve your spot now to make sure your name is on our short list of 3 foursomes, and get all the details about the trip at tmigolf.com/golfsmarter. Again, our adventure starts as we arrive on Wednesday, March 26, 2025. Then we'll play 18 on Thursday, 18 on Friday, and Saturday, one more round before getting back to the airport on Sunday. Now, if you'd like to make a full week and play more down on the trail, that's not going to be a problem because Tara and Alan over at tmigolf.com will work with you. There are so many longtime listeners who've become email buddies that I really want to finally get a chance to play with. And of course, if you're a Golf Smarter ambassador, then we have to finally meet in person. Again, tmigolf.com/golfsmarter. Want to remind you one more time to leave a review for Golf Smarter from wherever you're listening to this podcast. It really is the best way for people to discover podcasts when they're searching for something new in golf. Well, we may not be new, but we have a great archives and we get some great guests that we like to talk to all the time. But I want to hear what you think. Go ahead and write that review. And then once you write it, send me your review and where you posted it. And once we confirm it's there, we're going to send you all 3 gifts that are available to our Golf Smarter ambassadors. If you have any questions, comments, want to open a future episode with where you're from, where you play, and that episode number, or you've submitted a review on your favorite podcast platform, or you have a suggestion for an upcoming episode, or want more information about our adventure, please write to Golf Smarter Podcast